Hey guys, let's replace some struts on a 2014 Jeep Cherokee. This is going to work for multiple years. Take your tires off. The lug nuts are 19 millimeter. Get your tire off. This is what it looks like. First thing we want to do is get our sway bar link off of our strut. Highly recommend to change sway bar links at the same time. I'm going to just slide this little wire out of here. Same thing on the other side. We have a brake hose to get rid of. Just slides right out. If you don't have a hex or flat spots on the back of your sway bar, I like to grip vice grips on the back so this just doesn't spin. You'll know what I'm talking about when you try to do it. We got a 15 millimeter on the sway bar nut front facing here. It's going to zip right off for us there. We'll leave that over there. Our next nut to come off is our strut right here, and we need to get this whole steering knuckle to come down for us. I think that's an 18 mil over here. Yep. Let's get that on our impact. There we go. We got all the crud off of it. We have E-Torx on the other side that's just spinning. It's a bolt through clamp style strut. So let's get our E-sockets out. Figure out what size it is for you. These are E-sockets. They're like an inverted Torx kind of. It is a E14 socket. Make sure you have one of them. Now that our bolt's free spinning, we're just gonna put a ratchet on that E socket to keep it still. And our nut will come off for us. Now we take that bolt out and it's spinning out. There's a little bit of crusties in there. There we go. There's our bolt. Put the nut back on it so we don't lose it. And we're gonna wanna use a lot of PB Blaster or something on this. Right there by the aluminum steering knuckle and the steel strut. They like to corrode. What is this, a 36 millimeter, I believe? She's getting pretty worn down. We can go ahead and take that nut off. There we go. You don't have to use an air chisel. You put the nut on and hammer it a little bit, or a punch in the middle. There's a hole for it right there. We're supposed to remove the steering knuckle, so let's get to it. Let's start off with the tie rod down here, which will be a 18 millimeter. Good opportunity to change your tie rod at the same time. I'm gonna zip that out. We'll give it a few smacks right here. Just one. Tie rod's out. Let's go ahead and disassemble our brakes. Will be the next thing we want to do, I suppose. We'll swing it over. Start off with a 14 millimeter ratchet socket and a ratchet. This brake hardware is just spinning on the top. I'll have to put a slim wrench in there. Probably gonna be a 17. She's a little crusty. There we go. This hardware will just spin on you sometimes. Let's get this caliper out of the way and hang it somewhere safe. All right, if we want to take the mounting bracket and the rotor off, we're gonna need another E-socket. This will be an E20, I think. Yep, that's the ticket. This mounting bracket will now just fall off. Grab our rotor. Got a retaining bolt in it. It is a Allen retaining bolt right there. It's a 5mm Allen bit. This one actually came out a lot easier than most of them do because it's this style. Much nicer than the style they've been using for a long time. Every once in a while they do make improvements on vehicles to help us work better, but it's not often. This rotor is not going to come off for us. It's too rusted on there. Get a little lube going in there. Each one of these holes. Let's go ahead and get our lower ball joint nut off. That's going to be an 18. Let's see if this ball joint will come out for us. Yep, loosened up. Don't need to use a ball joint separator. Perfect. Left the nut slightly on. Our last piece of the puzzle is the wiring harness to the wheel speed sensor. These love to just seize in there and not come out. If that's the case, take your wiring harness and disconnect it from way up here. I almost think that's the route I want to go immediately, but we'll give it a shot this way. That sensor goes through that metal that far, and being in Michigan, you just know it's not going to come out for you. So we'll do it the other way. We'll take the wires out of their holders, and we've got the sensor attaches right here. Pop that out of there. Press on this and boom. There we go. Harness is out. Let's grab a pry bar on this control arm. There we go. Now we got our steering knuckle out of the ball joint. Make sure that CV axle's out of our way. Boom. Now we're going to go ahead and get our steering knuckle out of there. Off the strut, just like that. Let's lower the vehicle down and work topside. We're going to take a flathead screwdriver and pop this little cap off right here. And then we've got this clip right here. Should be able to take a screwdriver and pop her open. Make sure we got the weight off the strut. It'll make our lives a lot easier here. The weight of the strut's holding it up. I got it started. It's just being stubborn now. Should spin. Let's see if I can get this other one started. Lift the weight up. Spin it. There we go. And I caught the strut from falling onto the axle with my other hand. That's all that holds that strut up there, is this clip that locks together with these plastic teeth. Boom. Let's go ahead and unbox our new struts. take our strut and bottom it out into the knuckle so it's all like one piece like this. Get our strut up in there. All right, I had to recruit a helper. I couldn't do it by myself. I was trying to be He-Man and couldn't do it. You gotta know when to throw in the towel sometimes. Strut goes up in here. There, Jeannie. Woo!
Or do you gotta put that in there first?
I think we gotta put the CV axle in with it.
Uh-oh.
But that was a good solid practice.
Good practice run.
Yeah. Now you don't have to get the CV axle in there at the same time if you lock in the top first. It has those plastic lockers and that's what locks it in. You gotta put pressure on the strut though to get the lockers in. So we'd have to jack this up, put the lockers in, jack it down. That's the way you're supposed to do it. All right, now that we got our ball joint in the control arm and the struts in its position, we are going to lower the vehicle onto some jack stands to get that upwards pressure. That upwards pressure will allow us to get the clip in at the top. You wanna just lower it down for me? Yeah, I gotta make sure it's lined up at the top while you're going down. All right, go ahead and lower. All right. I gotta find the sweet spot here. Now go ahead. Wait. Raise it up just a hair. Ooh. Find that little. Go ahead and lower it down a little more. 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 All right. There we go. Now we got a nice little lip right here peeking through. And you just physically can't do that by shoving it up in there. Gotta snap those boys in all the way. There's one. And it'll spin as long as you have upwards pressure going. Ooh. There we go. They're totally locked in right here. Now we can go back up in the air. We'll pop our cover on while we're at it. And the new struts came with new clippy boys. We're gonna put our bolt in so the steering knuckle doesn't slip and slide on us. We're gonna push our steering knuckle all the way up till it touches this bracket of the strut and put the bolt through. Got the nut started on the other side. Now we can bring our control arm down. Now that our steering knuckle's locked in, get our steering knuckle out of the control arm. We'll put a little bit of lube on our shaft. Always lube your shaft. Help it slide in easier. Pull this out. Line up our CV axle. Make sure those splines are lined up. There we go. She's lined up in there. And I'm just going to loosely start our axle nut. Boom. And we're gonna go down on our control arm once again and get it. Boom. Ball joints in where it needs to go. Got our ball joint nut. Bring our control arm up. Start our nut. And we are ready to tighten everything up. We're gonna save our sway bar link for last, for doing both sides at the same time, get everything together besides the sway bar link. Just makes it easier. We're not going to move our tie rod at all. We're going to turn our tie rod, turn our steering knuckle to the tie rod. Let's go ahead and tighten everything up. There's going to be torque specs on all this. I like to go by feel. We're going to tighten up. Go ahead and look up your torque specs. We're going to tighten up the lower ball joint. We're going to tighten up this bolt right here that pinches the steering knuckle around the strut. Get our brake caliper back on. See, this rotor is still not coming off. We'll brake clean the rotor for anything that fell on there. Route our wiring harness back where it goes. Get our bracket back on, get our caliper back on. Sway bar length, 22 foot-pounds, tie rod in 22 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees. Ball joint, 22 foot-pounds plus 95 degrees. I think it said axle nut, 175 foot-pounds. Let's do it. Tie rod tight. Pinch bolt tight. Wires back in all their holders, clip back in. Sway bar length tight. It's important to do these checks at the end of the job, guys. Brake hose in its holder, lower ball joint tight. Mounting bracket bolts, I think those were 126 foot-pounds, top and bottom. Do these ones tight by hand with 3/8 ratchet, tight. That rotor set screw or set bolt would not go back in. It's like crooked. See that? It's seized on that way. All the lug nuts, or lug bolts, I should say, go in, but that's just a little off. It's just the way the rotor's seized, even with spraying it down, hammering it, wouldn't come off. Did I say? Yep. Now we got to pinch. I must be pretty good with my torque by feel because I got right back to where it was. Now we take our punch, chisel, and hammer and smack that in. Boom. Lug nuts or lug bolts were 100 foot-pounds. And that'll about do it, guys. Ship it off for an alignment. Always recommend it afterwards. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. And one more thing, pump your brake pedal before you take off because we decompress the caliper a little bit. So make sure your brakes are nice and tight before you go taking off anywhere. And booyah.